Hello everyone, and welcome to eCC's first webinar from our summer series. In this webinar we're going to do an overview of eCC's functionality and features, look at the installation process, do a walkthrough of orders and the inventory. My name is Parag. I'm the founder and CEO of the company, and we'll cover the demo in about 45 minutes, and we'll use the last 15 minutes to answer any questions you may have. I see that a few questions have already started trickling in, so we'll try and get to as many of those as possible. To get things started, I'll jump over and talk a little bit about WebGility. WebGility is a Intuit Gold certified developer for QuickBooks integration applications. Our flagship product is called eCC, or better known as e-commerce connector as well. It's primarily an integration platform for shopping carts, marketplaces, and shipping providers. We currently support over 20 different shopping carts, marketplaces such as eBay and Amazon, and 5+ shipping processors. And we also integrate with all the PC versions of QuickBooks. We have customers here in the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and South Africa. We integrate with a number of those QuickBooks versions in various geographies. Our offices are located in Phoenix, and we also have development and support centers based out in India. In terms of our agenda for the demo today, we're going to be taking a closer look at some of the features offered by eCC. We're also going to look at how eCC is installed. We'll cover how to create a profile in eCC, and I'll talk a little bit more about the concept of a profile and also how to configure the profile. We'll also look at the eCC dashboard, how to manage an order. We'll go through a sample process of placing an order and see how eCC functions when it comes to downloading that order and posting it into QuickBooks. We'll also cover the eCC inventory module, which is an add-on from a licensing standpoint into the application. And we'll look at the eCC scheduler, which automates several of your key functionalities without actually having to interact with the software. It runs in the background. And last but not least, we'll cover some of the questions that come through in the webinar, and we'll try to get through as many of those as possible. So we've got a packed agenda, so we'll jump right in. To cover a little bit about the eCC overview for some of those that are somewhat new to our product, eCC is a multi-channel desktop application, and the focus of the application is QuickBooks integration. So pretty much all the functionality that you see really starts with the first step, which is the ability for eCC to connect to your online store and download those orders into the desktop software. Once the order is in eCC, you can process shipments, and then you can subsequently process the order and post it into QuickBooks. As a consequence of posting the order into QuickBooks, the inventory gets adjusted in QuickBooks as well. And last but not least, the fourth step, which is posting of the order back to the online store so that your customer is notified and they receive an order confirmation with the tracking number details. Apart from this overall workflow, eCC also provides the ability to synchronize your inventory between QuickBooks and your online store. So at the click of a button, you can sync up the product's pricing and quantity for all the items that have matched up. And you can also create missing products. There's a built-in scheduler to automate many of the functionality and the steps that you see in the diagram in front of you. And it also supports a multi-user setup, so you can have one person managing your QuickBooks integration and another doing shipment processing, for example. And in the back end, we use Access as the primary database. At the moment, it is Access based, and that allows us to keep it very lightweight, and also the installation process becomes much easier in that case. Now going into the compatibility slide, talking about some of the applications that eCC is compatible with. As mentioned previously, eCC works with all the versions of QuickBooks on the desktop. So the Simple Start, Pro, Premier, Enterprise editions from 2005 to 2010, Point of Sale 5 through 10, QuickBooks Canada, UK, Australia, which is sold under the Reckon brand, and South Africa, which is also sold under EasyBiz. In terms of shopping carts and marketplaces, eCC works with Magento, Xcart, Virtumart, Pinnacle Card, Uber Card, and many others. And you can go to our website, scroll to the bottom of any page, and you'll be able to see a list of compatible cards. For marketplaces, eCC currently works with Amazon in the US and eBay in the US. For shipping processors, we support Indicia Dazzle, Stamps.com, UPS WorldShip, and QuickBooks Shipping Manager. Just a point of clarification in terms of QuickBooks, eCC is able to manage orders using the QuickBooks Shipping Manager, and Shipping Manager works for both UPS and FedEx. So if you're a FedEx retailer at this point, you can use the QuickBooks Shipping Manager option to generate FedEx labels. Also, in terms of payment processing, I highlight the keyword there, offline, because eCC is a desktop application. So we've got a lot of questions from customers in the past wanting a integrated gateway as part of the checkout process, and eCC does not really serve that purpose. eCC is a desktop app, so it really comes into the picture after the order has been placed online, which means it can process payments offline. So the scenarios in which payment processing would be applicable would be scenarios such as, let's say you do the authorization of the payment up front in your checkout, but you want to actually do the capture of the payment after you've shipped the product. So you can set up eCC to capture payments after the authorization has been done. Alternatively, and something that we don't really recommend, but in some cases, if you end up saving the credit card information in your cart, you can then download it into eCC and charge it offline. So jumping over from the compatibility over to our demo, as I'm sure quite a few of you are anxious to see that. In our particular scenario of the demo, we'll assume that we have a small electronics store, and for the purposes of the demo, we'll assume that the shopping cart is Magento, and I'm going to be using QuickBooks Premier as my QuickBooks application. I'll assume that all of my payments are already processed online using Authorize.net, and also assume that I generate my labels with USPS. And I like to record my online orders as sales receipts in QuickBooks. So here's my demo store, and I'm now using QuickBooks Premier, and we'll jump into the next step, which is to install eCC. Once you fill out a free trial for eCC or you purchase the application, you're going to receive an email from our team which has links to 2 downloadable zip files. And I'll give you a quick view of what that email looks like. Kind of looks like this. You get download links for the store installer and for the eCC installer. So the first part is the eCC store module. This store module allows your online store to connect with the eCC desktop software. Step-by-step instructions to install this module are available at webgility.com/installation. Second is this eCC desktop software. This is the application which you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis. And eCC, the desktop application, is what allows you to connect your online store with QuickBooks. It comes with a standard Windows installer. So let's take a look at both of these installations. First, installing the eCC store module. We provide a zip file, and you would extract the zip file, and once it's extracted, it provides a folder, and as per the instructions on the installation.php, you're going to set up an FTP account with your hosting provider, or if you already have an account for your online store, you can get that from your web developer or host. And using your FTP application, follow the instructions and upload the module up to your store and set the permissions. Second is the eCC desktop software. For the desktop software, we again provide a zip file that you can download. Once you've downloaded it, you extract the zip file and click on the install ecc.msi link to start the installer. We recommend that you install it at this C drive under the eCC folder. Once you've done the installation, you can click on eCC, the icon gets added to your desktop, and you can start eCC. So now, once I have eCC installed, let's take a look at what happens. I'm going to go ahead and click on the eCC icon, and eCC now loads up. Once eCC comes up, it brings up a username and password dialog. by default, as you'll read here, it says the default username and password is admin, which means I type in admin, and I can log in. Remember, I can always change my username and password afterwards. Once I've logged in, I see I see the screen called Manage Profiles. So going back to my presentation, the first step to setting up eCC is creating a profile. A profile is essentially a connection between your online store and QuickBooks. It establishes the foundation of how I'm going to connect eCC to the QuickBooks company and to my online store. First, I'm going to connect eCC to QuickBooks. I'm going to then grant access for eCC to connect to my QuickBooks company file. The second step is I'm going to connect eCC to the online store using the eCC module that I installed in the previous steps. So let's take a look at this. I'll switch over to eCC and I'll click the Create New Profile button. This brings up a screen which allows me to select my QuickBooks settings. Here, for this demo, I'm going to select Pro Premier and I'm going to hit the Browse button. I'm going to go to the Documents folder and I'm going to pull up this sample QuickBooks company file that shipped just for the purposes of this demo. I'll go ahead and select the sample product-based business. My QuickBooks file user mode is single user, it's in a local file, and my date format is going to be MMDDYY. Now I'm going to go over to QuickBooks and I'm going to go ahead and open the company file in QuickBooks. Once the QuickBooks company file is open and I have the same QuickBooks company file selected in eCC, I'll now click the button to test the QuickBooks connection in eCC. eCC is now going to connect to QuickBooks and it'll bring up a dialog box indicating the connection was successful. If this is the first time that you're connecting to QuickBooks, there'll also be an additional screen asking you to confirm and authorize which user to use, and you can refer to some additional videos we have on our website for details on that. Once my connection is established to QuickBooks, I'm going to go ahead and create my connection to the online store. I'll give my profile a name. I'll select Magento as my store type, and I'll type in the URL for my store. The second thing I need to enter is the store admin username and password. Remember, the eCC module URL is the location of the PHP file that you installed with the eCC store module. The installation link that we provided previously will have the details on where to find that link. So I enter in my username and password, and this is the username and password that I use to access the back end of my store. I'm now going to go ahead and test my store connection. Once my store URL is provided correctly and the username and password are entered correctly, eCC will be able to connect to it. In the case of Magento, since it supports multiple websites and multiple stores, I also have to select the website name and the store name that I want to use for my connection. Once I've selected that, I hit Next. Now eCC asks me for my store information. Typically, the store information will be filled out if it's already available in your online store, but for this demo, we'll go ahead and type that in now. Another reason why it's really important to type in the store information is if you're going to be using eCC to generate shipping labels, this is the address that's going to be used as your origin address for all of your shipping locations. Now that I've entered in all of my profile information, I'm going to go ahead and hit Save Profile. Now eCC asks me, profile's been added successfully. Do I want to continue with the configuration? I can go ahead and hit Next and say yes. Jumping to the next topic in terms of configuring a profile, the Configure Profile is essentially a wizard which guides you through the process of configuring eCC to manage your transactions, your customers, your inventory, your orders, your payment details, your shipping details. This is where you're specifying how you want eCC to handle all the business logic between your online store and QuickBooks. So let's take a look. I now switch over to eCC. The first screen you're going to see here is the Download Settings screen. The download settings screen is used to pull in all of my settings from both my online store and from QuickBooks. eCC is going to use all these settings to configure the rest of the application. So I simply keep the checkboxes selected, click on the download data button, and eCC is going to pull in all of my data from the online store. I click download data for QuickBooks. It's going to pull in all my customers, my items, and my other data from QuickBooks. Remember, we're not actually downloading orders yet. We're just downloading the settings. I go ahead and click next. The transaction screen is the next screen. Here, you're going to specify how you want to record all of your orders from your online store into QuickBooks. And eCC provides you two choices. You can use the same transaction type for all of your orders, so I can choose an invoice, a sales receipt, or a sales order for all of my orders, or I can choose a different transaction type depending on the payment method that comes in with the order. For this demo, let's go ahead and select sales receipt and click setup. I can go through the setup details for that particular transaction here, and eCC brings in the different types of templates, the transaction class, the sales rep, and my deposit to account from my QuickBooks company settings. There's a lot of details here that we can't cover in this demo, but please do look at some of our other videos. You'll be able to learn more of that in detail. We'll also have some additional webinars going through the transaction and the configure profile coming up in our next seminar series, and be sure to join one of those webinars if you need more help here. There's also another tab called Options. So for a transaction, you can set how you want to save the item descriptions, the transaction date, what do you want to put in the QuickBooks memo, and the ship date. Again, for the purposes of this demo, we'll keep those as the standard settings and move on to the next step. The next screen is my customer configuration screen. Here, I'm going to provide the settings of how eCC should match my customers between my online store and QuickBooks. Typically in QuickBooks, you'll save your customers as first name, last name, or last name, first name. But with eCC, we provide a lot of additional options, because there might be a case where you want to record the customer with their email or their zip code in their name if you've got a lot of customers. For this demo, let's just stick with the last name, first name option. The second option on the screen is how do you want eCC to handle new customers. eCC, when it brings in an order and you post the order into QuickBooks, it can also create the customers on the fly for you. So here I'm going to specify the customer type, the terms I want to set for this customer, tax details, and also if I have an existing customer, how do I want to handle their new information. If I don't want to create a new customer, I can also use a standard customer for all the transactions. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and continue. The next screen is the inventory screen. Here we're going to specify the field that I use in my online store that's going to match up with the field in QuickBooks. For QuickBooks Financial, Pro, Premier Editions, and Enterprise, the item name or number is really the only unique field for a product. So that's the only option you see in the second drop down. For the online store, I can either use the SKU or the product ID as it might be in your particular shopping cart. And the second option I have is the product name. The second option is how I want to configure eCC to handle missing products. eCC, when posting an order into QuickBooks, needs to ensure that each of the products that come in with the online store order match up with those items in QuickBooks. So if it doesn't find a matching item, now you have a choice. You can either create the missing product or you can map it to another item in QuickBooks. And we'll take a look at that as we go through the dashboard demo. Or I can select the option to use a standard product in case of all missing products, or I can flag the order as an error. I'm going to select the first choice. There's also some additional advanced inventory settings and download settings, but for the purposes of this webinar, we'll go ahead and skip those steps. I hit save and continue. The next is the order screen. On the order screen, eCC pulls in the various online order statuses that are available in my online store. Here, I can specify which online order status I want to bring into eCC. And if I want to download that status, what does it mean for the payment and the shipping status when the order is in pending state, for example. So let's say I want to download all of my pending orders. I'm going to go ahead and check that box that says download to eCC. Under payment status, I'll say that my pending orders are paid, but they're not shipped, so I'll say they're unshipped. I don't want to bring in any other order status types, but in your case you may want to select additional download to ECC checkboxes and configure those settings. Also, once I've figured out how to download which orders to download, I can also specify what is the status of the order when I post it back to my online store. And I like to mark my orders complete when I post it back to the online store, and I like to send an order confirmation email when the order's been completed. The next choice here is the order cancellation option. So I can select the status if I choose to cancel the order from within ECC, and I can also choose to notify. The third step here within the orders wizard is to configure which orders I want to bring into ECC. Now that I've selected the statuses, now I can specify what's my order start date. So let's jump and bring in all the orders from, say, last Monday. And I'll leave the order starting number at 0, so any orders that come in after the 19th, I'm going to pull those in. I'll hit save and continue. The next step here is regarding payments. For payments, in my case, as we mentioned in the demo beginning, my online store processes the payment, so I don't need to configure any of the payment details. I can just leave this as no and move forward. Again, in the webinars that follow, we'll go a lot more in depth with each of these steps so you get an idea of how the payment and shipment processing details work. For the purposes of this demo, let's go ahead and hit save and continue. The next screen is the shipping screen. Here, I'm going to specify if I ship my orders or not. And since I'm an electronics retailer and I do ship my orders, I'll go ahead and hit yes. Now you'll start to see additional screens opening up. First, I have to specify the charges where I want to record my shipping. So I select the item called shipping, and whatever charges have been processed with my order will get posted against the shipping line item. Next, I'm going to configure my shipping processor. So I'll select the first checkbox. ECC brings up a number of options. I'll just go ahead and select USPS and configure shipping. I'll go ahead and select the folder where I want to save my shipping labels, and I like to send most of my mail, say through priority mail and delivery confirmation. I can also select the default printer. I hit save. Now that I've set up USPS, if I have a weight scale, I can also add that. I can also map my shipping and payment methods, but again, we'll keep those as defaults and move forward to the next step. Here, we jump to the configured taxes and discounts screen. Under the taxes and discounts, again, you have a number of choices. If you don't calculate taxes, you select the first checkbox. If you use QuickBooks to calculate taxes, you can use a tax item for taxable orders, specify a tax item for non-taxable orders, or you can use the tax calculated from your online store. Let's go ahead and use the first option for allowing QuickBooks to calculate taxes, and I don't use taxes in multiple locations, so I'll just say AZ sales tax for my taxable and out of state. And if you don't have any values in this drop-down, all of this data is coming from QuickBooks, so you want to make sure your QuickBooks company file has the proper tax line items already set up, and if you need to add additional options, you can always go and click on the refresh screen so ECC brings in those new settings from QuickBooks. I can do tax variations per item. I can also record discounts and store credits. Again, we'll skip through some of these details for the purposes of this webinar. I hit save and continue. The next step is my packing slip. Under packing slip, I have some choices in terms of the company logo. I'll select from a sample company logo here. I can specify this footer, thanks for your business, and also have some other choices if I want to display the order notes, the transaction ID details, and so forth. So that's really all the profile configuration steps. I hit save and continue, and now ECC moves me to my dashboard. So let's talk about the ECC dashboard and the order management steps. The ECC dashboard allows you to download the orders, check on the status of the orders. We also have Webgility news and Twitter feed and help links there. You can see all the tabs across the top to show which orders are new, which orders have errors, which are completed. You can also generate a quick sales graph, and you can see the various processing steps. So let's take a look and jump over to ECC. I'm now on the ECC dashboard, You'll also notice on the top right I have a profile configuration drop-down. So if I had multiple stores, I'll simply be able to switch between my stores using this drop-down menu. For this demo, I'll go ahead and click Get Orders, and eCC is going to pull in the orders from my online store. eCC is now connecting to my Demo Magento store, and it's pulling all the orders that were placed as of last Monday and that are in the processing status. As soon as the orders are loaded, you'll see my New Orders tab is populated. Here, I'm able to see the order details, the date, the time, the person that ordered, the amount, the payment status, the shipping status, the QuickBooks status, and the Post to Store status. There's also different icons to view and delete the order from within eCC. Across the top are the key buttons to process this order. So the first step I'll see is the process shipping, because my payment's been made, so eCC automatically brings in the first step as process shipping. The second is post to QuickBooks. The third is post the item back to the store. Now, let's take a look at what one of the sample orders looks like. I double click on this particular order. On the order details screen, I can see the SKU, the product details, the pricing, and the amounts. I can see the shipping, taxes, discounts, and the totals. I can see the payment information. This particular order was with a check or money order. It's been unshipped and it's not posted to QuickBooks. The next tab over is the customer tab. I can see the billing information, and I can see the shipping information for the order, and I could also see the history. This order was received with a pending status from the online store. So once I receive the order, if I want to generate a packing slip, I can simply click on the print packing slip button, and eCC brings up the packing slip details. Again, these are configurable based on the profile configuration that we specified before. Now, if I want to process the shipping, I click OK. I can select the order and click the process shipping button. eCC now brings up my process shipping screen. Here, because I selected USPS without postage, it brings up the detail. I click on Generate USPS Label. eCC is now going to connect, and it'll bring in my label. Once the label is generated, I simply hit the print button, and now my label is generated. These shipping steps might vary a little though, depending on the shipping processor you use. I see a couple of questions coming in regarding which shipping processors we support. Just to segue in, we support UPS WorldShip to generate UPS labels. For USPS, you can either use Stamps.com or Indicia Dazzle. We also support QuickBooks Shipping Manager, which supports UPS and FedEx. Continuing on, once the shipping label is generated, the tracking number gets generated as well and added to the order, and now you'll see it says the order's been marked shipped. So the next step is to post it to QuickBooks. Remember, I have to process the shipping for an order at a time, but I can choose to post multiple orders to QuickBooks, download multiple orders, and also post them back to the store. If I click on the history of this order, you'll also see that the shipping status has been updated, and it tells me what my tracking ID is and that the label has been generated at a particular location. So I'll go ahead and select the order now and click Post to QuickBooks. Remember, we set a setting in eCC so that if eCC doesn't find a matching item, it'll ask me to create or replace the mismatched items. So here, I now see the screen which comes up indicating that eCC was not able to find a match for the iPod, and I have two choices. I can either create the item or I can map it with an existing one. For this demo, let's go ahead and use the Create Item option. So eCC brings in the name. I can put in a description. This is a test product. I can enter in my COGS account. I can enter in my income account. I'll say I've got 25 of those on hand, and I'll use inventory asset as my account. I click on Create Item. eCC has now successfully created the item in QuickBooks, and I hit Close. Let's go ahead and take a look at QuickBooks real quick and see how the item got created. I go to Lists, Item List, and there we go. The iPod's created for $100, and I've got 25 on hand. Now that the item is in QuickBooks, I can easily go back into eCC, hit the Post to QuickBooks button, and eCC will now match the item, and the order's been posted. Also, it tells me which sales receipt number was created, and if it created a new customer, it also notifies me of that. I also see now a checkbox. If I click the checkbox, eCC brings up the corresponding sales receipt in QuickBooks. Now this only works for the QuickBooks Financial Editions. I can't actually use that functionality for POS, but we'll cover that in the POS webinar. For this webinar, if you look at the sales receipt, you'll see now that eCC pulled in the right class, the date, the sale number, my item details. It brought in the shipping under the shipping, the item was matched up, and the sales receipt is now generated. I go back to eCC, and now I can post the order back to the online store. This is going to mark the order completed in my online store. It'll notify the customer, and it'll move the order from the New Orders tab over to the Completed Orders tab. Now that the order has been moved, you'll see the Completed Orders goes back to 1. Again, this was just a quick demo. As we go through a lot more of these details in future webinars, you'll get a chance to see the number of use cases. I can select multiple orders. There's also search and filter options. I can delete some orders. I can also have multiple users processing orders at the same time. But that was a quick overview of the eCC dashboard and the order management process. Fairly simple, just a few mouse clicks and you're able to download the order, match everything up, process a shipping label, post it back to the store. The next step in our webinar is the inventory module. Now this is an add-on module, and it requires an additional cost, but it is something that's available within the product. What the inventory module does is it's able to generate inventory reports. It's able to mass synchronize your products. So for all the products that match up between your online store and QuickBooks, you can sync up their price and quantity. You can also choose to ignore certain types of items. I can also manage products. So for example, if I add some new products into QuickBooks and I want to upload them into my online store, I can use the inventory module to do that, or vice versa. I can also map my items in bulk, and I have some advanced settings for creating items so that I can automate a lot of these steps. So let's take a look at the inventory module. To access the inventory module, I click on the inventory menu in eCC and I click on synchronize products. First, eCC is going to pull up a message saying I don't have any items yet, so I'll click OK, and I click on get items. So the first tab under synchronize items is my QuickBooks items list, and you'll see this dark column which shows that that's the field column I'm using for my matching. And eCC pulls up a list of all the items that are in QuickBooks. You'll notice the iPod we just created is also here. The quantity is now 24 because we just posted that order and it got deducted from 25 to 24. And now that I have my QuickBooks items, I can also see my online store items. These are all the sample items I have in my online store. The next tab over is the Matched Items tab. This shows me all the products that are in my online store and in my QuickBooks, and everything matches up. The price, quantity is a match, and the items also match up. The other tab over here is the Conflicting Items tab, and now this tab tells me all the products that are matched up, but they have a conflict, and the conflict could be in the quantity, or it could be in the price. So in the case of, let's say, this iPod product, I basically have 48 in my online store, but I only have 24 in QuickBooks. So let's take a look at how I can actually synchronize some of these products. So I'm going to select, go ahead and select one of these items. Let's choose the Nokia product. I've got 97 in my online store and 60 in QuickBooks. I'm going to say that my QuickBooks quantities are accurate. I want to update the online store. So I go to the bottom here, I select Update Online Store. I want to update the quantity. I'm going to hit sync. eCC is now connecting to the store and it's updating the quantity of that Nokia product in my online store so that there's no longer a conflict. The quantity is now in sync. Let's take a look at another feature here. I can select multiple items. So let's say I've got two products here that I want to sync up the prices. The prices in QuickBooks are accurate, and I want to update the prices in my online store. I'll hit price, hit sync. eCC is now connecting to the online store again, and it's going to update the price for those products. And again, you can do it one product at a time, or you can do multiple products in bulk. The prices are now synced, and those items start to be moved out of the conflicting items tab, and they move over to the matching item tab as soon as that sync is complete. Jumping over to the next tab, the mapped items tab, of course I haven't mapped any items yet, and I haven't ignored any items. So if I wanted to say not synchronize any of this product and I just wanted to ignore it, I can choose ignore and it goes to the ignore list. I don't care about this particular product either. I'll go ahead and hit ignore, and now I have ignored store items. So ignored items basically don't show up in any of your reports when you're trying to synchronize or create any products. So this allows me to ignore some of these items. Now that we looked at the syncing process, but for the price and quantity, let's take a look at the creation process. So eCC is going to pull the settings for items, and once the item settings are brought in, eCC now generates a report of the missing items in QuickBooks and the missing items in Online Store. So the first tab here is Create Missing Items in QuickBooks. This is telling eCC that here's the list of items that are in my Online Store, but they're not in QuickBooks. So let's take a look at creating one of these products in QuickBooks. So I'm going to select the MacBook. eCC brings in the item name number, it brings in the description, it brings in the price, the quantity, and if your store has a cost, it'll also bring that in. Now I can just specify whether it's an inventory part, use my COGS account, specify the inventory asset account, I can specify the income account. Now if I don't want to specify this for every single order, for every single item, I can also go to Inventory and Settings, and I can configure default for these settings, so I don't have to specify it every single time. But once I've specified the item type and the details, I simply hit save. Now the item is ready to publish. I can click on the Publish Items button, and eCC will create the item in QuickBooks. So MacBook was just created. Let's go ahead and look at QuickBooks and take a look at how that appears. I go to List, Item List, and there's MacBook. I double click on that. Notice it brought in all the item description, the COGS account, the pricing, and so forth. So that's a demo of how to create products in QuickBooks. Again, I can do this in bulk. So if I select multiple items, of course I can't edit the selected item. It grays all of that out, and then I could just specify the additional fields, hit save and publish, and it'll create those items in bulk. I jump over to the next tab. Just like we created items in QuickBooks, I can also create items in my online store. So let's say I have a product in QuickBooks. I'm going to scroll down here, try to find a product. So I've got this T1 product, and I can go ahead and say T1 is a demo product. I can select, put in a description. This is a test description. Specify a weight. I can select whether it's free shipping or not, whether it's a taxable or not. Again, these tax settings are coming in from my online store, and the categories are coming from my online store. So I can say, okay, this is actually belongs in my books category, and it's a default attribute set, which is something very specific to Magento, but some of these settings might vary depending on your shopping cart. So I've selected that product, I hit save. Now it's ready to publish, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Publish Item. And eCC is now connecting to the online store. It's going to go ahead and create that item from my QuickBooks and put it into the online store. Now remember, eCC is not uploading images, and there's some additional data like meta tags and things you might want to add to a product. So once you've created the item from within eCC, it does all the basics for you. Now you can go over to your online store and start adding the additional information you like about the product. The last part of the inventory demo is the store items mapping. So if I don't want to create the items, I can also select the mapping screen and then just map the items between my online store and QuickBooks. So that was an overview of the eCC inventory module. Let's go to the next topic. And we're slowly running out of time here, so I'll try and speed things up a little. But talking about the eCC scheduler. So the eCC scheduler is a system tray application. It runs in your Windows system tray, and it's set up to basically perform a number of your operations without you having to even click a button. So things like downloading data, downloading orders, syncing the inventory, posting the order to QuickBooks or back to the online store, all these things can be done in an automated fashion in scheduled intervals, so every 2 hours, every 3 hours, whatever the case might be. You can also set notifications, so whenever the scheduler is running, and it'll notify you of what's being done, and it maintains a log of all the activity that's going on in the scheduler. So let's take a look at that. I'll pop back over into eCC, I'll click on File, and I'll click on eCC Scheduler. You're probably thinking nothing's happened, but what happens here is that since it's a system tray icon, now my system tray is going to show me this eCC icon, which is the scheduler. So I can right click on it, and I hit Settings. That's going to bring up my current profile, and it's going to tell me all the settings related to that profile. So I can choose to download customers every, say, 3 hours, download items every 3 hours. I can download orders every 10 minutes and post them to QuickBooks every 30 minutes. And I like to post a store every 30 minutes. I can also set up my scheduler, notifications. I hit Save. Once that is done, I go over to this tab, I right click, and I can click on Start. Once the scheduler started, you'll notice these pop-up icons. It's going to connect to the store, it's going to post to QuickBooks, it's basically running in the background, and it's running all of my functionality that I've enabled it to run. So that was an overview of the scheduler. So we covered a lot during this webinar, and we'll jump into questions right after this, but a quick recap. We looked at how to install the eCC Store module. We looked at the desktop software. We covered how to configure the store profile, manage the order, shipping, and inventory, how to use the inventory module, and how to use the scheduler to automate the various tasks. So now we'll jump right into the Q&A. Thank you everyone for all your questions. Just to quickly wrap up our webinar for the day, the next few webinars are coming up. We're going to be doing these weekly. So next Wednesday we have the webinar on configuring eCC for QuickBooks Financial, and that's August the 4th. On August 11th at 1 p.m. Pacific, we have configuring eCC for QuickBooks Point of Sale. So we'll cover some of the details specifically that are around the Point of Sale application. And on the 18th, we're going to start to talk about shipping and so forth. So please sign up at webgility.com/webinars. I hope this was a useful session for you. It certainly was for us. Your questions were fantastic. And I know there are a couple of pending questions as well, and we'll follow up with you guys later. If you have any more questions, please do visit our website, webgility.com. Our support center is support.webgility.com. We're a little over time here, but I really appreciate everyone who stayed back, and thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.